Well, Femi Falana, human rights lawyer, says the federal government does not have the legal backing to proscribe the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, over its continued strike. Falana said this in reaction to speculations that the federal government is planning to proscribe ASUU for failing to call off the lingering university lecturer strike. He says ASUU's rights is guaranteed under Section 40 of the Nigerian Constitution and Article 10 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights Act. Falana also cited the freedom of association and protection of the right to organize in Convention number 87 of the International Labour Organization Convention, which refrains the federal government from banning or suspending trade unions.
Well, for more on this, Arise News analyst and former university lecturer Dr. Sam Amadi joins us now. Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much for being on the news tonight.
Thank you.
I mean, you're following all of this. How do you interpret what's going on? ASUU extending a 6-month-old strike. Looks like there's no middle ground. Committees have been set up. This is not new. Is there any headway? How do we get out of all of this?
I was really surprised. I thought ASUU and federal government were heading towards an agreement in the last 2 weeks. In fact, I had told some of my former students that, look, hooray, you guys are going to go back to school. Again, surprised, because we thought they have agreed on the portal, the ASUU own recommended system, and it seems like the federal government also agreed on some of the agreement. The question was whether they should pay 6 months salary or not. Again, this is really bad for education. At this point, really, I think both ASUU and the federal government has to concede that this strike is ruinous to the educational sector in terms of quality of learning. Some people have argued that when ASUU comes back, the makeup, all those makeup are trash. You know, even myself, who taught I'm head of department, I know that oftentimes when you kind of teach students in a hurry, you don't really teach them. They have to assimilate, reflect, have a time in which they think around those issues. So essentially, it's really bad for both ASUU, the image of the lecturers, because the education standards are falling. You know, in Nigeria generally, the standard is falling. Again, the question is, many issues come up to mind. I mean, what is government's lever to end this? So one is, maybe government may not have other resources now. I mean, apparently, we can say we have enough money to pay off ASUU. But somebody who has worked in government and also managed a parastatal, there's limited funding available at any time. In a global sense, we're rich enough to fund education with 25% or 30%, pay off all these things. But in a specific contextual sense, we don't have that funding. Two, you would also argue that maybe at this point, there should be reframing of the challenge. So ASUU can also look at it. Yes, we're entitled to get these agreements agreed upon, but is there another way we can push this argument and bring back students to school and start teaching? Are there other creative ways in which this valid, request, which is pay up according to agreement? And again, agreements are subject to renegotiation as far as their good faith. So if there was an agreement that's no longer implementable for real reasons, I mean, the difficulty for government is, I can be telling us you can't pay this when you are still financing waste. We saw governors who flew to London to have a useless political meeting, basically to see what they get out of a process. Even if they're paying, somebody's paying it, somebody pays for those. So there are certain things that don't instill confidence and trust. In a society that's full of trust, both ASUU and government can bend backwards. So ASUU recognize that,
meet each other halfway.
Exactly, that this is not doable because of not the fault of God, but it's difficult to convince teachers to back off from this extremist demand when you see government officials basically acting like as if they have everything.
Right. Now, any Nigerian in their 50s and above, I'm sure would remember, like forever. We've had strikes. There was Ali Mongo in the 80s, and you were saying before that there were strikes. These strikes, have they even worked? And if not, what are the other options really, without destroying the Nigeria's education system? I wonder whether the universities will ever recover from these strikes.
I doubt. You see, the strike in the universities have not worked for public good. at the end of the day, ASUU wins. How do the government pays up, they get what they want, but there's no way, nobody redeems the structural decay in the system. ASUU puts as a rider, sometimes routinely, education reform, but ASUU's real focus is their well-being of lecturers. Like a typical trade union. It's the problem with trade unions, from the public good perspective, that they have a right. They fight for the members who are in. They don't fight for outsiders. So even when they put add-ons, say, okay, we're fighting for democracy, they're actually fighting for welfare, which is fine. But in that fight, it's discovered that the public good don't get done. So when we announced students in the early 90s, 1992, there was argument of academic reform, and the argument to declare emergency on the sector. Till today, no structural reform has come to the university tertiary education system. People are saying we can also have academic unionize around universities so that there will be more concrete context to push for reform in those universities. Not centralized. And even though there's a right to centralize, but again, central unions may deal with bigger issues, and these issues of staff welfare, emoluments and payment should be decentralized. Why should the federal government centralize payment in the university system? Some universities can pay more than others and create competition. And that's the problem with Nigeria. See, if you use the market, this is where you can use markets. If you use the market principle, you have competition. So you can have first-tier universities. And what that does for everybody is that best scholars who are ready to work and do research aim to work in those universities as professors. Best students who want to work hard compete for placement. So you have in Nigeria where it looks like every university is the same. Everybody gets to pay almost, all the federal government almost the same thing. So I think there's need now to rethink this context and say, how do we improve education in a sustainable manner? How do we allow flexibility so that universities can even right size? There are some universities that are over staffed, if you like, in the context of students ratio, research, and even funding. And there are some universities that don't have. So I think this should provoke rethink around how do we change this idea of bureaucratizing, federalizing, like a parastatal, or university like a parastatal. Some of us also pushed that within the context.
Isn't that part of why they're asking for autonomy?
There should be autonomy for universities, but the autonomy goes also with autonomy of unionization. It can't act half and half, so that University of Lagos can start to go on strike. University of Ibadan is not on strike because the issues that Lagos is pushing
are peculiar to
Lagos.
But how does that then work in the academic calendar? And in all of this, someone pays for it dearly. And for me, it will be the students. Absolutely. So how do we, yes, we are creating competition, but how does that affect the Nigerian student?
For example, we know, for example, in Europe that there is summer, winter classes. You don't have to start day one. There's no law says the university starts today. The critical thing is that students don't have a 4 years curriculum, and NUC verifies and certifies those courses. They can start whatever. For example, the private universities in Nigeria are starting whenever they like. Everybody knows the quality is guaranteed by NUC and professional accreditation. So I think that the real point is, see, we are used to, this unionization came from the commandist military era, where federal government, as part of this access to education, built schools, federalize them, which makes sense for access. Now we are meeting a new challenge, which is how do we maintain standard in sustainable manner? So we're going to look at how do we now structure scholarship and funds. We just had the US government thinking around debt cancellation for students.
Yes.
So we don't have to pretend that we can fund wasteful access to education. We have to fund merit-based access so that people take it serious. You don't have to. Of course, the Scandinavians give free education. But the point is that, look, if you look at their population and look at their structure and how they conserve funds and how the system works, maybe you say university, the level of waste in terms of procurement things we do will not happen there. The fiscal prudence of university will be different from what we have today.
Very quickly, let's talk about this
additional fees being paid by students.
Right, and in addition to that, state-owned universities.
My view has been that students should pay more. I mean, my daughter was really and we were paying 45,000. Okay, when because of health challenges she came to base, I was paying 1.5 million. So you have to really look at improving school fees. Again, you provide scholarship so that people who are smart and who want to read can access them.
To the bursaries and
so. But the idea that the universities can be collecting 15,000, 30,000, and you expect that somehow they're going to take care of students. It's something I don't understand the economics of it. But again, state universities, like you said, they are quality, some of them are quality. And again, the state governments have incentive to intervene and set as many universities as they can. Because some of these schools can look at their back, access. Like Imo State, for example, they have many students going to JAMB. It seems like probably this is a place that state government can even create more state universities. But the rider here, overriding issue is that you just don't create schools and destroy standard. And that's back to my issue of decentralization. So if you have different tiers of schools, like in India, there are schools where bus conductors, university bus drivers are graduates. There are also top schools where the Indian bureaucracy feeds from, where the market feeds from. So we can decentralize so that bad schools, good schools, poor schools, top schools, but each of them have their level, sphere of play and level of certification and assessment, and the government can intervene with funds in different ways.
Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you.